So welcome everybody to this podcast where we are looking at London market claims priorities, and we're going to be exploring some of the challenges within London market claims, some of the opportunities, and also some of, I guess, the client perspectives in terms of claim service and what they are looking for both now and in the future. Joining me on this podcast is Julia Graham, who's the CEO of Airmic, and Ben Bolton, who's the founder and managing director of Grace Church Consulting. And I wanted to start off, Julia, by asking you about your claims pulse survey that you've recently sent out to members to get a feel for the types of issues and challenges that have come out of that survey. And I can then kind of layer on top of that some of the results from our London market claims pre-event survey. And then, Ben, you can probably add to it, given the research you currently do in the market as well with claims teams. So, Julie, do you just want to give us a bit of background to what the pulse survey is and what it's about, and perhaps some of the key themes that came out of the results?
Okay, well, look, Jeremy, thank you very much indeed for inviting me to talk to you about this subject today. We're really delighted to be part of this because at Airmic, we fully recognise, based on what our members tell us, that they see claims as strategic enablers for their companies and for their insurance programmes, because at the end of the day, it's what you're buying, in essence, not a policy cover, but you're buying the ability and willingness of those that you insure with to pay your losses. So very important to us. We do a survey every year and we check the pulse on claims, and we have a slightly different theme each year. So this year our theme is looking at what challenges do people have in getting their claims paid, what digital claims issues are top of their agenda. And we could not have any podcast about insurance at the moment without touching on the whole subject of captives. So we've grouped our questions in those issues. I can tell you now that the feedback so far and the activity is up on last year's survey. So we're definitely hitting home. And I think by the time we finish, we're going to have about 70 or 80 large organisations, and they are the main buyers. We can tell who's responding. They are across all sectors, and they're significant buyers with billions of premiums in total. So it's a really good cross-section of people.
And from those results, let's just start at kind of the beginning and talk about service and client expectations. Is there any kind of strong indication from what your members are saying around how they perceive claim service? Are there any kind of friction points that come out of the results?
Yeah, and we can talk about challenges and service. Service generally, we do ask a very short question: are you happy with the service that you get? And the majority of members who respond to the survey are happy with the service. So I don't want to leave anybody with an impression that the insurance industry is doing a bad job, because generally speaking, our members are saying they're doing a very good job. So I think that's a really important question to get out the way. Specifically on what challenges do they have in resolving their claims, then the common challenges that they face by some considerable way are delayed response times. We are still far too slow in the insurance industry. 70%, which is a high percentage, said that that's their top issue. The next one are a long way down, but the next one is disputes over coverage. And I think that's partly driven by the gradual corrosion in some policy covers, which aren't even consistent across some insurers all of the time. So those disputes are going to be variable, even for the same insurer, but in different places. And then you've got to go quite a long way down to get things like lack of transparency or insufficient documentation. But I would say by some considerable margin, time is still the enemy in claims.
Ben, are you seeing that in the research that you're running with claims teams? Is there a kind of disconnect there that's coming out?
Yep. Hi, Jeremy. Hi, Julia. Just to say, we didn't prepare this before. We didn't speak before. I think those are pretty much exactly what we find. We are independently interviewing claims brokers in the main who experience huge volumes of claims, and from the very simple to the very complex. So I think the first thing is that over the last 3 years, we have seen service levels rising. They were pretty dire through and after COVID, which is understandable, I think, in some ways, but it's generally improved. And I think it's improved because, we'll come on to this, I think there is a desire to be better at claims, generally speaking. And there's competition around it. I think the brokers are driving that competition. So I think that service is improving. It's leveling off a bit, and we'll come back to that. But I completely agree with Julia. I think there isn't a fundamental problem with service, particularly London market end of things. We would also completely agree. We've just run a question on we do NPS scores most of the time, but we've just started to look at effort and the importance of effort in brokers' eyes. And the main issue that they talk about is response times. That is the key one. I don't know why the insurance industry has been so slow for so long. I've been doing this for 25 years now, and that has not improved very much. And I think we need to look at that. So response times, yes, and that relates very closely to the effort that, in our case, claims brokers perceive insurers are making. So there is something missing there, and I think that's something we could try and solve, I think.
Can I just come back on that too? Because I said that one of the other areas of challenge, in addition to delays, was disputes over coverage. And we shouldn't be that surprised, actually, because when we look at what our members have said, what's most important to them when renewing or evaluating insurance quotes, the thing that's most important to them is coverage breadth and policy terms. So if they're not getting quite the coverage breadth and policy terms they thought they were getting, it's not that then surprising that disputes over coverage becomes an issue. So there is definitely a linkage between those two subjects.
I completely agree with that. And I think, I mean, others have made this point too, but I'm very much of the opinion that we do miss a trick again in insurance, where we don't do enough communication or explanation of those policy wordings right up front. And I think there's a quid pro quo. I think we have to start to say that the client, the customer, has much more of a role in this. They're not passive participants. They should know what they've got and what they're buying. If there's going to be a large payout by an insurer, inevitably that insurer is going to look pretty closely at that.
But isn't there an elephant in the room here, which we're sort of skirting around a little bit? Because some of the delays and frustrations are because the industry is still not where it should be on technology. I think if it was higher up the scale on technology performance, digital performance, data performance, I do think some of those challenges, certainly for delays, would be a lot less than they are.
Yeah, we've done a lot of work with claims teams themselves. I think they will all say that one of the biggest hindrances they have is not having the data or the MI at their fingertips. I think that's probably true right across the industry, is that those important pieces of information or intel, when they're deciding or making judgment on claims, is often not there. They have to dig around for it. And I think that causes delays. I think it causes issues over coverage, which may just be because they can't find the information. And that is that's a huge frustration for clients, obviously.
I agree. And there were two specific comments, just to finish. And these are quoted by members. One was, bringing claim systems into the 20th century would be a good start. And the second one was, the focus, however, first should be on data quality and accuracy. And if you get the latest technology and it's used to produce accurate results. I mean, we did some work on resilience a couple of years ago. We said the route to resilience in the digital age was to use the technology that's in front of you and to get the most out of it. And again, there's a bit of a correlation going on there, I think, as well.
I think it's... I just would add, I think it's fair to say that we do work in the UK GI market, for example, and for quite some time, claims portals have been invested by particularly the large players, and now probably 7 or 8 of the main insurers in those markets, and brokers really like those portals. They actually work really well. They haven't translated over into the P&C markets, and I'm not sure why. And I know there's more complexity there, but
Do you think one of the reasons might be that it holds you and ties you to particular brokers than underwriters? I think that's part of it.
Yeah, I think there's that. And I think the other argument, I think, may well be that there's a cultural resistance because people say, well, this is too complex to put onto a computer. One, I think that's one of them. I think the other is, I think there probably is more of a reluctance to invest by some of the specialty insurers. Whereas actually, when you look at the composites who are global, and this is a move I think that's changed, you're probably seeing it too, Jeremy, is I think there is now a much greater investment happening as part of competition. So I think that we need to look at those systems and things that work well and say, well, let's experiment with new things, because I think technology is really important in this area.
Certainly in the the London Market Claims pre-event survey results, when we asked how important do you feel speed of settlement is to clients, 90% put it as very important or important. So that tells me that you've got claims teams that see that they should be doing this. And to your point, Julia, that the technology or the data quality or the data being in disparate systems or disparate places within the organization is stopping them achieving that, or there's something at the macro level in the processing that isn't allowing that to happen.
Do you think, Jeremy, what might be missing, however, though, are industry solutions rather than broker or insurer or MGA solutions? Because what seems to be apparent to us is that you need solutions that cut across all covers and all insurers and all brokers, because they operate at an industry level.
Yeah, I do. And obviously that's been a challenge for the London market, as we know. I would say that it's quite interesting when we looked at claims portals. Now, there are probably 5 or 6 different software solutions there. When you actually talk to the people who operate those systems, those claims portals in the UK GI market, they said that actually the software is pretty much kind of me too. It's similar stuff. And where you get your competitive edge, I suppose, is around your people and what you do with those data. So I think you can have lots of different software solutions and choose, I choose Apple, you choose Android. So I think those standards are already probably there. Without having to necessarily go to a kind of enterprise thing. But actually, I do absolutely agree. You need standards, and you need to say, okay, well, let's have a look more industry-wide, because in the end, I don't really see the point. It seems incredibly inefficient to all be fighting over small pieces of software and saying mine's better than yours, because that doesn't really create competition.
Do you think we could learn a thing or two from the banking sector on that?
Yeah.
I mean, they seem to manage to do it. It's not what the technology is. I completely agree with you. It's what you do with it.
Yeah.
And I think the platforms are often there, but they're not being used to the top of their potential.
So I think on that point, I'd say a couple of things. I think the arguments that you both put forward have been used as a crutch sometimes by the industry to say, oh, this is too complicated, we can't do it, so we need to continue with our, let's say, just call it in inverted commas, paper-based traditional way of doing things, because the solutions haven't been good enough. Let's just say that. But I think it may be becoming full circle, because the technology is becoming so sophisticated now that you probably don't need those market standards that were the only solution for the last 15 or 20 years, where the technology can drill down into a piece of data and realize or understand where it should be attributed to. So I think it's going to be very interesting over the next 3 or 4 years to see how this technology is adopted. I think with the pushback of Blueprint 2 and that kind of central modernization program, I actually don't think it's going to dull down any kind of investment, as you were talking about, Ben. I think it'll actually drive it forward. So it's going to be a very interesting space, I think, how technology is going to change.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, Joe. I'm a great believer that it's kind of not planning, but you need planning, but I think it's competition that drives a lot of change, really, at the end of the day. And at the moment, I think, because I was saying claims service is kind of leveled off, we're very good at the brilliant basics, and I think your survey reflects that, Julia, as to ours. But we kind of really need to move, I think, in insurance into a kind of age of innovation, where we're saying, look, let's try new things, let's do different things, let's make this technology work for our industry rather than resist it, because I think we do resist it. As an industry.
In Airmic, we're trying to support an industry initiative, but it's jolly hard work.
Yeah.
But we are seeing, we also need to take our glasses off in terms of where we look, and we look outside the UK, because we need to be aware of what people like the association GBMW are doing in Germany. They're looking at pan industry systems. And we know that they're being looked at in other parts of the world. And so they will converge. At some stage, they will converge. But when they converge, will be driven in part by the fact that buyers are prepared to use them.
Yeah.
So we've actually got some Airmic members now using these systems actively and almost driving it the other way to say, well, we're a bit fed up of waiting for these things to be developed. Let's take some of this into our own hands and use what's out there.
Do you remember? I can't remember what it was. I think it happened a few years ago in the London market. I think it was the Big Six or started to drive change because they got fed up with not happening in technology, and they drove some interesting change. And I think some of the systems we've got now were driven because that was them taking that into their hands. I kind of think we need a bit more of that. I mean, we've got things like core data record and things that are which we won't go into now, but those things seem to me to be good schema that could work really, really well. Seemed to be a good idea to me, and pretty fundamentally important. And everybody was kind of up for it, but then claims kind of fell into the background a bit, I think, and I don't know why that happens.
Do you know, one of the things I think might also escalate this, because we're looking at solutions like big tickets.
Yeah.
And my client personally quite keen on what they're doing and why they're doing it. And that's not just because it's driven by the need to collect and deal with data for underwriting or claims, but it's also about dealing with it securely. And cyber and security have never been higher up our agenda than they are today. And when you look at what insurance companies put at the top of their risk list, they also put the security of their data up in the top three, if not number one. And so I think it's not just the desire to deal with technology, but also to deal with data securely.
Yeah.
That might also be one of the drivers that we see starting to come to the forefront.
Yes, and I think the other thing is around AI, which is that clearly AI is a legal and compliance issue, that's absolutely huge, because if you get systemic error in claims, you've got a really big problem. So I completely understand why that is. So almost to your point, Jeremy, the speed of technology, it creates almost a break in and of itself, which I understand. But I equally think we need to have that kind of fast fail mentality that technology has. And I think at banking, as you say, Julia, has adopted that kind of idea. Let's try things, let's see what works and what doesn't, but do it in a sandbox environment where we can.
Yeah, it's also when AI starts making the decisions on whether or not to deal with a claim.
Exactly.
And if it does the buyer have the ability to know if that's happening and to challenge it?
Yeah.
And we're somewhere away from being in that position, according to our members.
No, I agree. I'd be responsive, though.
Yeah.
The
answer at the moment is we don't know in most of the cases.
Yeah.
But that will change.
And true the world over, I think, isn't it, with AI? I think everybody's wrestling with that same issue. And maybe we shouldn't, as insurance, think that we're different or exceptional. I think we're just dealing with the same issues. I'm sure there's same in banking and everywhere, really.
Yeah. Some of the issues you've talked about, Julia, do you see them also within kind of the captive environments?
Increasingly. We ran a captive survey for the first time, actually, earlier this year. And I was surprised at the maturity of technology being used by organisations that had captives. That was the first thing. So I think that will change, but I think it's an evolution. We were also interested to see of the number of organisations that don't have a captive. And in our survey that we've just run on claims, it's over half don't have a captive. 75% of that half are thinking of having one. Mm-hmm. So it's a high expectation level that will change, and that will be driven by captives becoming, as we call it, mainstream, or a captives first approach, where you look at your captive first about what it can do for you, and inevitably its ability to support the surfacing of claims is going to be one of those considerations. So it's happening, but I think the UK captive domicile initiative, which Airmic is very closely involved in with insurers, brokers, and of course the London Market Group, that is adding an impetus, and it's moving quickly. By the way, a regulator producing something in less than 2 years, interesting.
Wow.
So watch this space. I think it's set to increase.
I think it's very interesting. I think just in terms of industry structures in general, I think they are changing and moving, and those kind of tectonic plates are really moving. And I think that's partly because of technology. I think it's people can see what can be done more kind of cost effective. And it's also, I think, a realization that there will be parts of the industry are overmanned, if you like, and can be done much more efficiently. And I think what we come back to, though, in things like captives and everywhere, really, is the data sharing and the collaboration over data. And that really needs to be kind of worked out, I think, between clients, brokers, carriers, MGAs in the kind of medium to short term, actually.
I think some of the TPAs are becoming quite sophisticated as well.
Yeah.
I've been looking at what people like Gallagher Bassett are doing.
Yeah.
Their new MD, Manal, who heads that up, is an ex-Fujitsu executive, and you think, what? These things are new and different, and I think the more we get people like Manan coming into the industry, that's also going to shake a few things up.
Yeah, and often the regulator, in my experience, has been behind on that, thinking that outsourcing is generally bad, but actually that's where the technology investment can happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're not going to get, a big bureaucratic carrier, doing the latest technology within their own business on their own. But a TPA like Gallagher Bassett or any of the others will say, okay, this is worth it because we invest in that kind of central technology and have lots of clients, right? So I think it is about the right place at the right time for this technology, and that seems to be a good thing. I think it again, that's all going to be worked out more and more, but the drive is huge into those TPAs at the moment.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, but that's relatively recent and relatively quick moving. Yeah,
it is.
Just wanted to talk a little bit about claims, talent, skill sets, and where claims teams fit into kind of the buy-in process. And Julie, I think you've got some interesting stats about how many insurers bring their claims teams to those kind of renewal meetings. Give us an insight into that.
Not enough, is what I would say. But we're a little bit sort of spiky on that one, because we say back to the members, well, you're driving this. You insist when you have a renewal meeting that the claims people are in the room, that they are in the room when you're designing your covers, so that they understand what it might be that they're paying a claim for in the future, that they are there when you conduct your tenders, and that they're there when you conduct your renewal process. They should be a constant presence. And personally, I think the broker should invite them and the underwriters should invite them, but then the buyer should insist.
Yeah.
So they've got a lot of controlling influence over this.
I completely agree, Jude. I think bring the client back into the space. And I mean back into the space because I think there's too much deference to what goes on within the industry, and it's too it's not transparent enough. I mean, I've got a number which we just asked about recently. What's the importance to broking claims teams of having someone from the insurer represented at meetings, either with clients or on placing decisions? 75% said it was very important. And how often does this happen? 75% said it doesn't happen. So you've got, these are behavioural gaps, and I think you're right, Julie. You either have people insisting, or we say, look, you get paid for making this happen. Do something with, the remuneration or the bonuses to say we need people in meetings. It's not a nicety. It's really, really crucially important.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and a lot of it is in your hands, your own hands.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, it is. And I think it's not good enough just to say, well, it's kind of cultural, or we let people do their own thing in these situations. I think we can see these are measurable things that clients are asking for, and we ought to say, right, the industry from the broker and carrier perspective must meet those needs, as Julia said. But again, it must be then the clients say, well, this is how I make decisions. If you don't do this, then we'll choose somebody else. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And then it affects, if you don't have them in the room, it affects the quality of the communication process.
Of course it does. It must do, mustn't it?
It's got a big knock-on effect.
I've spoken to claims people over the years who say we just aren't involved enough. Our underwriters won't let us get in there, and yet when we then get a claim, we've got to pick up the pieces. And I think that's part of the problem too. There are some insurers with some really good initiatives, I think, where they look at pre-inception planning and scenario planning, but I don't see that everywhere. I only see it in pockets, and I think that should be the norm, not the exception.
I wonder as well whether it might be a reflection of the, I guess, shortage or lack of skilled claims talent that is out there, or at least the pool that everyone is fishing in is the same pool. Because in our survey of claims directors, talent, leadership, and the next generation of claims professionals was high up there in one of their concerns.
We did a survey earlier on this year with the IACP, Association of Claims Professionals, and it's a global study of just just people working in claims businesses, insurers. They said, one, claims is becoming more important at point of sale. But to make that happen, we need to reskill, we need to upskill in different skills. And we need technology skills, which we've just touched on. And we need sales, soft skills to be redeveloped in these teams, because we're too technical, we're too kind of focused. And I think that, as you say, Jeremy, is a real barrier to then saying, well, look, we're going to be in with a big client, finance director's going to be there, they're all going to be in the room. Anybody in any business would say, we need the right people in the room, we need to look good, we need to make this work. So if you've got very technically focused people who might arguably come across as a bit negative or a bit that, I think you need people with the right skills in those meetings, and I think that's really important.
I think one of the fundamental things, though, that's sort of winding this back a little bit is that claims has always been, if it was a career that you were then asked to pursue, then my life is finished. You wanted to be in marketing, sales, maybe underwriting, claims. Not sure about that. It hasn't had the right reputation or presence. So you're never going to get the talent in there if we don't sell it properly. So number one is we need to make it very clear the types of careers that exist in claims. And there are some incredible careers that exist, but we're rubbish at defining and selling them.
Yeah.
And only then will you get people who want to be part of it. And I think the other issue is, which talent are you looking, what talent are you looking for? Which type of people? So there's a sort of technology, data-driven talent where there's some great things that you can do. They are the technical engineers, a bit of a dying breed in claims, but never, ever have they been more needed than they're needed now. And there are some wonderful engineering roles, and I'm seeing more women coming into those roles as well. And you get people like Vicky Roberts-Mills, who's in there from AXA. I mean, Vicky is a really great example of a female engineer, ex-oil industry, really up there with the top. And you see more role models like that you're going to get more women coming into these types of jobs, because they traditionally have not been the domain. And then I think that the last thing is there are some great things that AI are doing that mean you don't need to waste your time doing them. Loading engineering reports and surveys into systems so that you become the analyzer of those systems, rather than the poor person who has to pour through hundreds of reports and waste your time doing it when you could be doing more useful things.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that technology now, people are saying that can take the drudgery, the stuff we don't want to do.
I mean, it's quite rare. This time last year it was still quite rare, but it's not now.
And I think that sense of we can now become more efficient through that is really important. I think it's getting, I was going to say that what people, I think, certainly big insurers and brokers I'm talking to now are saying, where do we add value for the client? That's really, really key. And I think it's so important for Airmic as well to be aware of that. I'm sure you are, but I think this industry is moving towards the customer. I think it is saying, look, we've got to add value. Therefore, historically, you could say, well, our systems and our legacy systems don't allow us to do this. But I think going forward, you're not going to be able to say that. I think, and you're only going to lose if you do say that. I think you've got to say, we've got to have people with the right skills. I've had a long campaign going, which has so far not come to fruition, which is to get rid of the word claims, because I think it's just a department. It's not a word, but I do see this changing, because I think that the industry is becoming much more, I interviewed a head of underwriting quite recently, just new into role, and he said, we don't think of our business as claims or actuarial or underwriting. We think of it as a whole offer to the client. I think that's fantastic. It's what we should be doing. I don't go to each department. That's from the 19th century, not even the 20th century, and I think that's what's going to change. And I think companies like Allianz, for example, have said, we're moving away. We're moving towards solutions. We're not talking about claims as a process, because that's just a process.
Well, it's lots of engineering and solutions.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're going to have to change the name of your conference in future, Jeremy.
Yeah, I was thinking that whole rebrand thing, as you were talking about, we could like a well-oiled fire station. They're the heroes that swing into action.
Yeah,
but you take your chief fire officer to the the council meetings. So you need a whole team. It isn't just. I think that word claims, Ben, I kind of agree with you. It's a claim. It's like it's already so admin and boring. It isn't. You're solving problems. You're talking to clients, and like you say, Julia, it's what they're actually
buying. It's a negative word, isn't it? And it's being used negatively. I mean, there's a big complaint just gone into the SCA from Which about it, which I know doesn't touch all parts of the industry. Good luck to them. But I think it's just, the trouble is it's become a word that's so negative. It's associated with fraud, and it also kind of implies that you've got to go and claim and ask and beg for the money back from the insurer. And I think that's entirely wrong. That's not what insurers, in my experience, are not behaving like that. They say, well, when it's good, we want to pay right. We want to pay.
An issue for the whole business, though, because when you think about it, the word insurance has got negative connotations. The word risk, before you even go any further, has got a negative view. And we've actually got a few members now in big companies that they don't use the word insurance anymore. It's all about risk engineering, risk financing, loss engineering. And I think engineering has got a really important role to play in the language of our business going forward.
Yeah.
Because that's much more about what we're up to.
I think rather than just telling people what we do, we've got to say what's the benefit of all of these things that we do. And that's where the language needs to change fundamentally for the next few years. And I think that would be a massive boost for the industry, because then, young people coming in, just one example would say, I know what I'm doing now. If I go, your point is well made, Julie, about claims, and there's a historical thing to that. But, if I'm coming into the engineering solutions department, that's kind of a dinner party or a pub conversation. You can tell your mates what you do. I work in claims, arguably not so much.
I agree. Same applies when you talk to the board as well. They'd get just as easily bored.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
We're running out of time. The last few moments, I just wanted to ask you a quick question. If there was one kind of priority for the next 12 months that you would like to see the industry focus on to improve London market claims, where would you ask them to focus, Julia?
I think my focus would be on the talent. I know that you can do anything unless you've got the right people in the right place at the right time with the right skills, able to do the right thing and to look to the future. Because everything else then won't work if you don't have that as a foundation. And I'm very impressed by some of the work that, for example, the LMG have been doing on future talent, and other organisations as well, not just the LMG, but LMG in particular. That it's all about getting people aware of the opportunities that we offer, and then getting those people into the business.
Well, I'll be boring and say exactly the same thing. I think it's exactly right. I think it is about the talent. I'll just sort of extend it slightly to say it's about the future skills, understanding what those future skills are, whether they be technological skills or whether they be softer skills that we need in spades in this industry if we're going forward. And I think, that combo of technology, technical, and then the kind of human skills are so important. And we've missed parts of those. The balance has been wrong.
Yeah. I think if I was going to put my 2 pennies worth in, as you probably guessed, Ben, I would say I think claims needs to become more IT, digital, and AI literate. I think and also data as well. I think there's a massive gap in people's knowledge about when they talk about AI that actually they don't know what they're talking about. And I think just to have some education will then open their eyes to the art of the possible, and then they will be thinking about their organizations in a different way, and then the innovation may come as well.
Can I add to that too? We talk a lot to people like Risk Connect and Origami, and they say exactly the same thing. They've got brilliant systems, but people don't always know what to do with them. But I think we need to remember that the people who are the buyers are often in really small teams. They're not sitting in the back office of a big underwriter with big teams underwriting or dealing with loss. Even in a large company, they can be teams of only 2, 3, 4 people. And so getting education into the right place can be really difficult. And I think we need a concentrated effort to work out how we do.
Yeah, I agree with that, Julie. And I think something kind of took me by surprise. I was talking to a very, very large IT consultancy a couple of years ago, and they said, our problem, we're very big in all these areas, banking, everything else, we want to move into insurance. And the problem is that most of the time in insurance, technology does not talk to those frontline people. It tends to talk to CIOs and IT heads. But to be a proper consultancy, to really make a difference, we have to be talking to the frontline people. Now, what I wonder, and I think is because we're so siloed, as you say, Julia, that we haven't worked out how to collaborate very well across the industry, across the the distribution chain or the value chain. I think if we could try and work that out, I think technologists, those companies, would have a much better chance of saying, we'll provide technology that has real benefits, and that'll be cheaper to do as well.
There's a little cameo example of this with the initiative that's ongoing with the Bank of England and the PRA on captives. And the first meeting I went to of the subject expert group that they've put together, over half of that group were the buyers. I have never seen that in an initiative in the insurance industry before. And they were really keen to know what the end user wanted. And of course, quite often the end user is confused with the broker. And the broker is not the end user. The end user is the person who pays the premium. And I think that that's one of the reasons why this Bank of England initiative has got every good chance of succeeding, including in the space of claims.
Great. Well, thank you both for joining me in this really great discussion around claims priorities and challenges. I think we'll reconvene perhaps in a few months' time, following the various conferences and special interest groups that you're running, Julia, and see how things are progressing. Because I think it's just to close, a very exciting time to be in claims and insurance generally, for all the reasons that we've discussed, and things will move rapidly. So we'll aim to keep you abreast of developments. But for now, thanks very much, and we'll